Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the MPWR Podcast. I'm Eric, and today I am joined by Don Neldon, and we're going to change things up a little bit.
We are.
So hang in there with us. If you love the format of today's podcast, which is a bit more Q&A, then let us know. If you hate it, let us know. We're here to serve you, not our own egos. Most weeks, Don and I unpack one core leadership tool or concept on this podcast. But lately, we've been hearing so many good questions from you, our faithful partners in crime, from clients as well, from teams and leaders who are trying to grow while carrying a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And so to make things more practical, to get even more into the trenches of life and leadership, we're going to shift things up. So today we're hitting pause on the frameworks and just having a real conversation around questions leaders like yourself are actually asking, the stuff that doesn't always make it into a keynote or workshop.
Yeah, that's right. And our goal today was really to dig into some practical questions, the ones we get DMs about, the ones we get in coaching calls when, nobody else is listening. And the reason we wanted to pause and go in this direction is because we recognize that all of the leaders that we're in contact with are trying to do their best. They are literally trying to figure out, how do I navigate the difficulties of leadership under increasing pressure, and they don't feel like they have anywhere to go.
Yep.
So we just wanted to pause and dig in with you guys a little bit today.
Yeah, and I would add it's operating under pressure. It's also operating under pressure in an ever-changing landscape.
That's right.
I mean, things are changing a mile a minute, right? Across almost every industry. Economics are impacting our business. The political atmosphere is impacting our business. Social dynamics are impacting our business. The generational shift in the workforce is affecting our business. The landscape is ever changing, right? The one thing we do know is that nothing's going to stay constant. And so for us as leaders, I think sometimes it's really helpful to understand that when the landscape is changing, the old fold out paper maps, they are outdated very quickly. And so what we believe at Empower Coaching is that we need to equip ourselves with something different, a compass, right? And the purpose of a compass is to navigate ambiguous terrain. We need to know north, south, east, and west so that we can at least point ourselves in the appropriate direction and have a far better chance in the midst of all of the different, steps that we have to take to navigate where we want to go. And so you can think of Empower Coaching and our leadership operating system, and the conversations we're having is trying to equip you with this leadership compass.
Yeah.
So for today, we picked a few questions that we've been hearing very often that hit close to home for most leaders. Questions about ownership, growth, pressure, and what it really takes to lead well without losing yourself, your shit in the process.
That's right. All right. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump in. Eric, I'll ask the questions, and then,
Well, maybe I'll ask the questions and put you on the hot. No, I'm just joking. So you can ask the questions, but then we're both going to respond and just kind of share the overflow of what we've learned.
That's right. That's right. Okay. So question 1. I feel like I should be growing as a leader, but honestly, I'm just trying to keep my head above water. How do I develop when I don't have time for development?
Ooh, doggy. Okay, first of all, this may be the number one pushback that we hear from potential clients. When we go in, or whether it's on a Zoom call or an in-person visit, and we're kind of just assessing the situation, and we start to talk about, moving the needle in this leader's, capacity in their team and the organization. And we start talking about, hey, a coaching process. And the first thing they always push back, ain't nobody got time for that.
That's right. Weekly meetings? What?
Weekly coaching calls? What are you talking about? Right. So because we know our time is precious, it's a finite resource, and most of us are just overly busy anyways. Right. So who has time for this?
Mm-hmm.
But here's what we find is that after 2 or 3 months of working with these leaders in a consistent, predictable fashion, they come back to us and say, we could not afford to not do these meetings.
Yeah.
They're so powerful. It's so important. And so I'm sharing that as a perspective for our listeners to understand that personal development it's a non-negotiable. It's not an option. And, we've seen professional athletes who are rock stars in high school, and then they're all stars in college, and then they get to the professional ranks. And if they're not careful, they kind of start to lean into, I guess they say, their laurels, right? Like what they've already developed. They're so good, they made the professional league, but then they kind of start to plateau. Why? Because all of a sudden it's like, I've made it. I've come this far. Like, I've got the big paycheck. Like, what else is there? Well, what else is there? Are you kidding me? Like how about taking your game to the next level over and over and over again? We've heard all these sayings like get 1% better every single day. And over time, that leads to significant transformation and an increase in our performance. And so I would just encourage our listeners, like, think about this, in working with like a coaching staff or a front office of these professional sports organizations, what I often say to them is, hey, listen, you put your players through the ringer. You require that they watch game tape on a regular basis and analyze and assess everything they did during the game or during a practice. Now, even they record practices, and so they can watch what they're doing, how they're performing. They analyze, they're considering their diet, they're considering their exercise, they're considering their weight training, they're considering their mental health, their emotional health. It's like there's so much investment into these players to increase their quality of performance. And then I ask the leaders to ask them, how are you not taking your development just as seriously? Do you not want to be a peak performer? Do you not think that your lack of performance and leadership development is going to then begin to undermine all the time, energy, and resource that you've invested into these players? So I'm sharing this as a paradigm to help us as leaders remember, like, one of our core responsibilities, we owe it to ourselves, to the people that we have influence and impact, to take our own development very seriously. And so with that, to give ourselves permission to create space in our schedules for intentional investment into our own development.
That's good. And the reality is, leaders, we're never done. We never get to the end of the day and feel like, well, I did it all. I checked everything off the list that needs to be accomplished for my organization, right? And what that can lead to, if we're not careful, is we fall prey to tyranny of the urgent.
Yeah.
The next thing needs my attention. The next thing needs my attention, right? And what I hear you saying is personal development cannot be ignored because we are busy humans.
Yeah. What we're saying is that's not a legitimate excuse.
That's not a legitimate excuse.
No.
You have to carve out time, just like you carve out time to focus on your physical wellness, your physical development, your relational development, right? You have to carve out time to focus on your personal development. And because the only person you're letting down is yourself when you don't do it, it's really easy for that to fall off the list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And then we're stuck blaming everybody around us. Well, nobody gave me time. Nobody allowed, nobody invested in me. And it's like, okay, you're an adult.
Yeah.
Time to own that responsibility and invest in yourself.
Yeah. So let's dig in a little bit to how you and I, as busy humans running businesses, carve out time. What do we do for personal development? How do we make time for this?
Yeah, we got to get into the nitty gritty. As I've mentioned, I'll share a few just off the top of my head. As I've shared so often in our podcast episodes, one of my longstanding disciplines, predictable patterns, is journaling, right? It's taking time to practice self-awareness, right? To reflect on, sometimes it's, hey, based on yesterday's experience, what went well, what didn't go well? Hey, what am I celebrating? Where do I feel challenged? What are the things that are most weighing on my mind right now? Is there anything causing me to lose sleep? Am I waking up at night stressed, or my mind racing about anything? I'm just throwing out prompt questions that I've learned from people much smarter than me over the years. And I just like, that's a great reflective question. I'm going to just write that in my journal and use that as a new prompt. And of course, for our listeners, we are in the process of developing an empowered journal that will have all these resources in it for you coming soon. But for right now, journaling is a really big one. And here's what I often do is, like, every 3 months, I will go back through and read my journal entries, just kind of skim through them so that I can make sure, because what will happen is I'll process something on one day that doesn't really get resolved for sometimes days or weeks. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, that we got that breakthrough, or I was able to get that insight, or, hey, we were able to unlock this new project. whatever the case is, to go back and learn from my life journey, my leadership journey is incredibly important, because if I don't go back and read over it, I'll forget that stuff very quickly. And I'll even highlight, underline, circle things in my journals and, dog ear the page and say, that was a really important thing that I learned, or some challenge that I overcame, or something I learned about myself, or something I learned about my team. And again, I'm just kind of throwing stuff out to give our listeners kind of an idea. So journaling's a big one, number one. Number two, I try to carve out about 2 hours every single week for myself to reflect on where, just from an organizational perspective, from a leadership perspective, where have we been, where are we going, and where am I today? Because very often we get caught up in the day-to-day grind that we kind of lose perspective on the bigger picture. So we call it, a friend of mine calls it bungee leadership. And this applies to a lot of different aspects of our leadership, but it's the ability to recognize we have to bounce in between that 10,000 foot perspective and ground level perspective, right? Whatever that represents for us in an organization. So that we don't lose the broader perspective. We don't lose the forest for the trees, and we don't lose the trees for the forest. Both matter. We have to navigate both on a regular basis. But if we don't practice with intentionality, reconnecting with that perspective, then that can be really unhelpful. And then I would just say one more thing is, I do this with my wife a lot. I do this with our team, as you can attest to, but just having some, whether the regular or semi-regular meetings where the intention of the time together is to ask the question, hey, can we give each other feedback on how things are going? What from your perspective, where do you see that I'm winning or I'm operating well? From your perspective, where do you feel like maybe there's some things I need to pay attention to? And again, that can get a little testy, because I think most of us are not comfortable soliciting regular feedback from other people. But I'll tell you what, as human beings, because we have blind spots, every one of us, if we don't invite people to act as those mirrors, then more often than not, we're probably bumping into a lot of things and causing damage that we're unaware of.
Yeah. That's
what
good.
about for you?
For me, I like to double dip. So,
like your ice cream cone into,
sure, or veggies into ranch.
Okay.
No, as a busy human, right? I try to combine activities. So one thing I will do is,
I like this. Stacking habits is what you normally say.
I will stack some things together. So I try to walk at least a mile a day. During that walk, I will take time for reflection. I don't sit still well. And so I've often felt like a failure because I can't practice quiet times. Meditation is hard for me. Journaling can be difficult. However, I find when I am moving my body, I am able to take that time with myself as well. It becomes easier.
Yeah.
So whether I am listening to meditation while I walk, whether I am listening to a devotional, or just quietly walking with some reflective questions in mind, that is my time to reflect, to sit down. Okay, what's working? What's not working? And as you said, those are some great questions that you can always come back to. Where am I feeling the rub in life right now? Yeah. And I find that walking helps these ideas kind of flow through me a bit easier, and I don't feel like a failure for not being able to sit still. So
I love that. Well, it's interesting, because what our listeners probably are noticing at this point is, well, hold on. But aren't you reading books? Aren't you listening to podcasts? Aren't you going to conferences? Aren't you watching YouTube videos? Yes to all that stuff. To all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. We invest in our own development in a lot of ways, but what we're trying to push into is that we can read books, listen to podcasts, go to conferences, all that stuff, and actually not experience any personal development, because what we don't do is create this space to then reflect on what we heard, what caught our attention, what we're learning.
That's right.
And so what we would encourage is to take all those things that we normally think of as an investment into our development. Do those things. Read great books. We need conversation partners out there. We need to listen to podcasts. We need to be exposed to new and challenging ideas, not just the ones that reaffirm what we already think or believe. But then we've got to create the space to actually matriculate. So the way I often say to people is, our bodies are so incredibly designed that we shove food into our freaking pie hole, even whether it's nutritious or not. And our body does this amazing thing, which is called digestion, where it extracts the nutrients and then gets rid of the wastes, all with the intention and purpose of strengthening our physical bodies, right? And so we have to think of it that way. Like too often we're consuming, but we don't have an intentional digestive process to extract the nutrients from our life experiences, from the things we're reading, listening to. So that's where I think ultimately I want our listeners to hear is we've got to have those digestive processes.
Yeah, we are gluttonous for information these days. We just want more. And we feel like more information is going to make the difference for us. And that's not it. It is practicing self-awareness, right? Honesty, humility, self-love, which if you want more on that, go find our episode in season 1 on the EQ matrix. But if you don't know where to start, just start with self-awareness.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter how much information you ingest. If you aren't able, as you said, to digest it in a way that it's going to create helpful change for you, it doesn't matter.
I love it. All right. Next question.
All right.
Why do I keep slipping back into the same old habits when things get stressful? I know better, but in the moment, I default to these unhelpful attitudes and behaviors.
I mean, could you help me? Can you solve that for me? Okay. I submitted this question, Eric.
That would be so amazing. I submitted this one, actually.
Yeah. I mean, this is a reality of being human. And I literally just had this conversation with somebody on a coaching call yesterday, because our brains are so good at what they do, which our brains are designed to help us survive first, and then secondarily thrive. But the first one consumes most of its energy. How do I survive what I'm currently experiencing? And then it wants to conserve energy to do that as quickly and efficiently as possible. We learned as very young creatures what some helpful survival mechanisms were.
Yeah.
Whether that was retreating, whether that was anger in response, like there's so many small little intricacies that our brain has developed, and we call that, like, those are neural pathways, right? I like to refer to them as game trails. You look at a mountain and you can see where the animals regularly walk. Why do they continue to walk those paths? Because they're easy, because they've been carved out, because there's a pathway there now. They don't have to keep trudging through the brush. Our brains operate the exact same way. And so we have developed these habits over decades.
Yeah.
And suddenly we become aware, oh, crap, these aren't helpful. The things that helped me survive my difficult childhood, the things that helped me survive the jungle of middle school, like, we developed those as survival mechanisms, and they got us here. However, at some point, we typically become aware of the fact that those things aren't maybe what's going to get us to where we want to go. And so we have to start carving new pathways. But that's hard work. It takes practice and repetition. When you think of decades built developing the initial habits, it's not going to happen overnight that you develop new habits. So it's not uncommon that even for you and I, after practicing some of these skills for a long time, we find ourselves defaulting to some of those old behaviors.
Yeah, I love that. I love that imagery, right, that you shared about, as you're walking through some hills or in a mountainous area and you see where animals or even people, like if you're out hiking somewhere, where people have walked that path so many times that the grass, the bushes, everything's kind of tamped down and it even dies out because of that constant trespassing over that space. And here's the way I think about it is stimulus response. Like, there's another way to understand how our brain operates, right? We have a stimulus, an experience, and then our brains, out of survival mode or just old habitual responses, we have an immediate response. And I think the lie that we start to believe is that there's zero space between the stimulus and the response. Like, this is just who I am. This is just how I do things. This is just how I respond. This is just how I'm made.
I don't have a choice.
I don't have a choice. And I think one of the things that we constantly remind ourselves and our clients is that one of the greatest superpowers that we as human beings have is choice. That in between every stimulus and response, there is a choice. It may happen so quickly that we don't feel like there's space for a choice. We don't think we're making a choice. Sometimes the reality is we made a choice 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Even into our childhood. And that response at least made us feel safe in that moment. And so then that becomes the default response when I experience this type of stimulus.
That's right.
And so the name of the game for us as people, as leaders, is, like we've already talked about, is practicing self-awareness to recognize and pay attention to, okay, where is my response to this type of stimulus helpful? And we should celebrate that. If your knee-jerk reaction when your kid walks in and says, I got a B on the test, and you say, I'm so proud of you. I know you studied hard. B is a great grade. I know maybe you wanted an A, but you know what? So proud of the work you put in. That's a great immediate response. If your response is immediately, how could you get a B? That is so terrible. You're so much smarter than that. I can't believe it. We're so embarrassed. You're not reflecting on our family reputation very well. Like, that's an unhelpful response, right? And so to identify where are the helpful knee-jerk responses that we have, and to celebrate those because we want to continue with those pathways. And then we want to learn to identify what are the knee-jerk or default responses that we're having that are unhelpful, that are harmful to ourselves or to the people or environment around us. And as we pay attention, then we can ask the question, okay, this is the kind of stimulus that I experienced. This was the response. And then here's the $1 million question, $64 million question, really, that we teach people to ask, and to pause and to ask this question. Well, how would the best version of me respond to this?
Yeah.
The version of me that I would feel most proud of, that most aligns with my kind of core sense of who I am, my values, the kind of life that I want to lead, the way that I want to influence or impact this environment or these people. 99% of the time, we're going to have a great answer. So then what we do is say, okay, I'm going to have these kinds of stimulus over and over and over and over and over and over through my life. And so I'm going to make a choice today that the next time I have that kind of a stimulus or experience, I want to choose this response. Guess what? The next time you're probably not going to. You're gonna after the fact go, oh no, I missed the opportunity, right? Like, there's a fork in the road. I didn't even see it. I just saw the old default pathway. That's okay. And we pay attention, we reflect on it, and say, the next time I want to practice this response, the next time I want to practice. And the more we do this, what happens is we will, over time, start to notice that there is more space between the stimulus and our response than we realize.
That's right.
And then in the moment, we will learn to slow down and say, okay, what does the best version of me do in this situation?
Yeah.
And that's how we begin to choose the new pathway, to practice it. And the more we, like you said earlier, the more we learn to practice that new pathway, that slowly over time becomes the more trodden path. The old path stuff starts to grow back up, and it becomes the path that over time we don't even see anymore.
That's right. But the thing I want to celebrate here, and the thing I know that we celebrate with our clients, is that the person asking this question has started to notice their responses.
Yeah.
That is the first step in this process, because as you said, most of us don't even recognize, oh, I behaved that way again.
Yeah.
Oh, I had this default response to that same stimulus, right? So even though it's after the fact and they're kind of like, dang it, why do I keep doing this? The fact that they are recognizing their default responses is the first step to noticing the path that they keep going down and recognizing that they can choose a different path.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so powerful. Okay, let's jump on a new question. You ready?
Okay. Yep. Here we
Or
go.
do you want to ask this one or do you want me to ask it?
I'm going to ask this one.
Okay, go for it. You get.
How do I know, Eric, if I'm the bottleneck in my own team's growth?
Ooh. Follow me around for a few months and you will learn what it looks like to bottleneck your team. I'm as guilty of this as anyone, so I'm very familiar with this whole concept of becoming the bottleneck. And let me say this. First of all, let's just talk about what are the indicators that we're becoming the bottleneck. We've heard that phrase, but what does that actually mean? So I'll throw out a few if you want to add any, and then we can talk about like, what do we actually do about it? I think one of the clearest indicators of when we're operating as a bottleneck is we will start to feel the weight and frustration of it feels like everybody is coming to us for the stamp of approval to do anything and everything, almost to the point where it's ridiculous. Can I use the restroom? Can I spend $5 on the company card? And can I, go home 10 minutes early today? Whatever the case is, like, it's almost like there's a proverbial line outside of the door of our office where everybody's waiting to get permission for something. And that is very often an indicator that we have become a bottleneck.
Yeah, that's right. If your team feels like they can't make a move without you, then that's a good sign that you are probably the bottleneck of the organization. And how do you determine that? How are you able to figure out if that's what's happening? Well, one really simple but not easy, one very simple way is to ask for feedback.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you experiencing the workflow? Where are you finding it difficult to continue to move forward? Where are you noticing that there's breakdowns in the process?
I love that.
Inviting your team to reflect with you on that is one really simple way to at least start the conversation, right?
Yeah. Let me zoom out for a second because something's on my mind. Before we get kind of back into the practical, like how do we actually begin to navigate this? But I love that we've thrown out some indicators. We've thrown out like we need feedback, right? Because a lot of times we don't even realize we're the bottleneck.
That's right.
Until we start experiencing turnover in our team and our higher performers they're going to get frustrated and they're going to want out because they'll feel like they're not empowered. I want to zoom out and talk really quickly about what I know for me has been true. Two things that will cause me to become a bottleneck in any team or organization. Number one, operating out of fear or insecurity that my team may drop the ball, blow it, make a mistake, and that somehow is going to reflect on me. And therefore, I hover, micromanage. I am constantly scrutinizing every little thing they say, do, every email, every text, every expenditure. And that's generally an indicator that I'm operating out of fear and insecurity.
That's good.
The other one is if I'm not careful, because as a leader, I probably can do what they do if they're on my team.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of it, but some of it. And so the temptation is that I basically am concerned that they're not going to meet my expectations, right? Or I don't want to spend time, helping them learn something. And so it's just easier if I just step in and do it myself. And so I'm unwilling to give away, to delegate, to pass on responsibility. And that's usually a reflection of my own unwillingness to spend time investing in those team members. And so it's just easier for I can't tell you how many times you and I have been in a conversation and we're like, okay, well, we just did a workshop. We're going to follow up on these people. Who's going to follow? I'm like, I'll do it. I'll follow up on these people. I want to have those conversations, right? And a lot of it's because number one, I like to have those conversations, but also because I'm like, I just know what I want to get out of those conversations. I know where I want those conversations to go. And rather than saying, hey, Dawn, I want you to take this half, I'll take this half. Let's pre-brief those calls. Let me talk about what I want you to think about as you're engaging those follow-up calls. And then let's debrief after you've made those. That again, ain't nobody got time for that.
Right.
And so bottlenecking can often be just a reflection of the fact that we are unwilling to invest into the process of really delegating responsibility to other people.
And developing our team. So to go back to the first question we asked, which is, how do I take time for personal development? this is probably maybe question number 2 that we hear. I do not have time to develop my team.
Yeah.
But however, that might be true in the moment. You might feel that way in the moment. However, the question you have to ask is, am I satisfied with being able to accomplish basically what I can do by myself with a little bit of help?
Yeah. They become really your support staff, not your team.
Right. That's right.
Wow.
Or am I looking to really expand what I'm able to accomplish, what this organization can do, how we're going to reach our vision, right?
Oof.
And unless we are willing to take that hard look, because that you're so right, bottlenecking often comes down to fear and control.
Yeah.
And to overcome that, it takes the process of developing people who can not only do what you do, that because maybe they'll never be able to do exactly what you do, but they can carry the weight and do it in their way, which in a lot of, we have to understand as leaders who often, as leaders, we were high functioning individuals that were able to accomplish something, that we got moved into leadership. When we empower people to accomplish the work in their way, with their color, with a slightly different texture, that actually amplifies what we're able to accomplish. It's not going to look exactly like the way that you did it. And that's a good thing. Yeah.
It's interesting. You know, we've been working with a client now for a couple of years. This particular client, when we entered into the contract, what we discovered is they were a mom and pop shop that had really grown. I mean, they went from literally 20-ish employees to almost 200 employees in a very short period of time, which is amazing. The problem is they were not able to make the transition that we're talking about. What happened was, as they got bigger, they just became like the genius with 1,000 minions, right? I'm sure you've heard that phrase. This massive support staff to help them achieve what they're trying to achieve. And when we started working with them, we said, hey, listen, this organization is already plateauing in terms of its impact, the ability to expand its impact. And the reason is because you don't have a bunch of team members, you have a bunch of minions who are just here to serve you and help you do what you do. And so there's a paradigm shift that has to happen, right? That's an expression of bottlenecking. And you know, and the constant complaint was, nobody can make decisions for themselves. Everybody has to come to me to solve their problems. You know, these are the typical things we hear. And I say, well, yeah, because that's how you've treated them. It's no different than in the game of parenting. Like, right, if we do everything for our kids, solve every problem, answer every question, have every meeting on their behalf, that's why we grow up with kids who are incapable of operating out in the world apart from their parents.
That's right.
Right. It's a form of codependence. Rather than saying, hey, as you get older, I'm investing in you intentionally, the character and skills so that you can operate effectively when I'm not around.
That's right.
That's called adulthood, right? Adulting. Right. And in a lot of companies, what we find is we have a household of children, not a household of growing adults. Right. And so there is a paradigm shift that has to happen. And a lot of it requires that we recognize, like you said, that to increase our impact, the measure of our impact is not what we can achieve by ourselves. It's what we can achieve in and through other people. Like, I want our listeners just to pause and think about that. I'm going to say it one more time. And the measure of our leadership is not what we can achieve in and of ourselves, but what we can achieve in and through other people.
That's right.
Right. That's why it's called leadership and not just management. Management has this concept of, like, you know, status quo, just keep everybody in the box, or the rats inside the pen, whatever it is. And I don't know, it's not a fair assessment of management, but that's why we use the word leadership, because it's proactive. We're leading others. And the whole concept of leadership is, how do I empower others to do things that I can't do, because we're limited in our time, energy, and resource. We're finite creatures. And therefore there's only so much impact I as an individual can have. But if I can invest aspects of who I am and what I'm able to do into others, now I'm starting to multiply, which, by the way, by the time this podcast comes out, we will have hosted a masterclass, our monthly masterclass
on this topic.
In the month of November, it's on this topic. Like, what is the strategy of going from incremental growth to exponential growth? And that the paradigm shift that we talked about in that masterclass is literally the shift from addition to multiplication.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Not just adding one more team member, but how do I invest into that team member that multiplies the skills and abilities that we have as a team?
That's right. And another kind of color of the same question that we receive is like, why can't my team take ownership? Why won't my team make decisions without me? And it is essentially two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think there's a few questions that we as leaders, it's very easy for us to look out and be like, why can't my team ...
Yep.
Anytime we find ourselves doing that, it's an invitation to pause and say, how have I contributed to a culture? How has my leadership created a situation in which ... right? So when we are looking at a team that is either bottlenecked by the leader or is not taking ownership, feels like they can't make moves without the leader's thumbs up or approval, I think there's a few things that as team members we receive from our leaders that give us that indicator, right? Some of it is when leaders create an environment in which it's not safe to fail. Well, if it's not safe to fail, then I'm certainly not sticking my neck out to make a decision that might end up not working out.
That's right.
Heck no, I'm going to wait for my leader to give the approval that decision is okay to move forward on, because then if it doesn't work out, it's on my leader, not on me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Another situation that we see sometimes is that leaders might have delegated responsibility, but not the authority.
That's right.
So we've told somebody, here's what I want you to accomplish. However, we didn't give them the authority to make the decisions necessary to accomplish that. So now every step of the way, they have to run back to the leader to get the approval to do the next thing in the process to accomplish the task that they've been given.
Yeah.
And that is so disempowering for people.
It is. I was just on a call literally yesterday with this executive team, and one of the VPs is complaining about this person in another department, and the two departments are very interconnected and really feed off one another. And this VP is saying, like, this person in this other department, like they're making these mistakes and it's getting incredibly frustrating. It's impacting our department and our ability to do what we're trying to accomplish. And the CEO stepped in and said, hey, listen, I hear you. And I can imagine how frustrating that is. Here's my question, though. Is that person making mistakes, dropping the ball, experiencing some failure? Are they learning from that? Because the way that we develop tribal knowledge or, company IP, right? Like, how do things work around here is through trial and error.
Yeah.
It's through experience. It's by learning from our mistakes, celebrating our wins, and that becomes tribal knowledge. And he was challenging this VP. He said, like, listen, if all you're doing is harping on this individual every time they drop the ball and you start scolding them and all you say is do it better next time, rather than saying, hey, what are we learning from this? What could you do different next time? Hey, what's your plan of action the next time we experience this?
For the next time. That's
right. If we do that, which is the kind of company we want to be, then that person is guaranteed to grow and learn. And now they become a more valuable asset to the organization. It's the culture when there's a culture like this or people who are unwilling to learn from their failures.
Yeah.
That is the real liability. The ones who are willing to do everything they can to learn and grow are the ones who become an incredible asset.
That's right.
And that's where tribal knowledge comes from. Okay.
I think I think we have time for one more question.
How about this? Okay. There's so many good questions. I don't want to rob our listeners by trying to shortcut, some responses. So can we pause this episode?
Yeah.
And then pick up in the next episode with another set of questions, and whether we drop them successively one after the other, or you want to sprinkle these Q&A sessions throughout, our
because we're like maybe a third of the way through our questions.
I know, and there's so many more, but these are the ones that we've been asked about. Okay, well, let's do this. Let's pause here. I just want to say to our faithful listeners, thank you. We're so grateful that you're on this journey with us. We're so thankful that you're clearly sharing this podcast with other people because it continues to grow week over week. We're shocked, quite frankly, and by the numbers. What I'm not shocked about is the fact that we know these conversations and the principles and practices that we're talking about are absolutely what we wish we had 20 years ago. And so now we're trying to put these things into the hands of every person on planet Earth. We're glad that you're a part of that journey. So continue. If anything that we've talked about today is hitting home for you, or you know somebody who might benefit from listening to this, that's the name of the game. Like we want to help people operate more effectively under pressure and in an ever-changing landscape. If this has helped you in that respect, share it with somebody else. Let's continue to grow this tribe called Empower Coaching. Thank you for being with us. Until next time.
Well, before you jump us off, I need to say one more thing.
Okay, go for it.
Really quick.
Until next time. Until next time.
Shut up. Listen, people, if there's a few ways, if you're wanting more, right? We mentioned a couple of them actually already in this podcast, but if you're ever wanting a deeper dive, go back and listen to our first few episodes. They are us walking you through all of the tools that we work on with our clients. And our heart in this was literally to put in your hands the tools necessary to do what Eric just said. How do we become that better version of ourselves under increasing pressure? So that those first several episodes are one easy way to do it. The second, hop on our monthly masterclass. Eric also referenced that. Every month we gather in real life, IRL, to do a virtual masterclass live where we do a deeper dive on some of these topics. The one for November was on how do I create exponential growth instead of continuing to scratch out incremental growth by expanding through my team. Wow, what they can't see is Eric.
Until next time.
Guys, this is what I have to deal with, honestly. Anyways, go to mpwrcoaching.com/masterclass. Until next time.